along to another episode of Sweet Tea and Coffee. I'm your host. No, I don't know. I was thinking about throwing something new in there.
Yeah?
Like
what?
It. I don't like it. I'm here with Blake, and we are approaching episode 50.
Yeah. We're getting
Blake,
close.
how do you feel about that, 50? Can you believe, I just said a minute ago, I cannot believe people have listened this long.
I don't know what's going on.
It's all these wonderful people that we have on that we're interviewing. It has nothing to do with
them, their family, and their friends. And that's,
our numbers went way up when it stopped being you and me.
It did.
And we started interviewing other people.
Yeah.
We're trying not to take that personally, but...
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, we may make an appearance, just you and me.
That's
at some
right.
point,
You may have to suffer through an episode or two coming up. But seriously, approaching episode 50. Thanks for listening for so long. And this has been a ton of fun. This is one of my favorite things that I get to do.
Yeah, me too.
So this is an exciting day because we are interviewing the original.
Yeah, the original. Friend of the pod, number one.
Friend of the pod, number one. First to rate, first to review, first to give feedback. Mm-hmm. We should have a special sticker just made.
We keep talking about these stickers that they don't exist yet.
They don't exist yet, but I was told yesterday. Yeah. I don't know when you're listening to this.
I think they're on order, yeah.
I was told yesterday they are in process and they're real. Friend of the pod stickers coming to you soon. We've got Holly Middlebrook in the house today. She is one of our top most requested that you have asked to listen to, and the original friend of the pod. This is going to be a great episode. Stick around. All right, as I said, we've got Holly Middlebrook here again, original friend of the pod. Holly, how does that feel to have a title like that? I mean, that's got to be one of the top things in your life, right?
There.
I mean, that's really meaningful. So you've been listening for almost all of our.
Right.
I mean, you've except for the one that released like yesterday that you hadn't listened to yet. But I mean, you've listened to all of our episodes. What has been your favorite part of it? Because I mean, we've just loved doing this.
Yeah.
What has been your favorite?
I think most of all, and I think I alluded to it when we were talking in here earlier, just that I love the recorded history of the church. I love that we're recording people's story, their faith journey, the ups and downs. And I think I just told y'all how many people it's made me think of in the past that have attended this church that I wish we had their recorded stories. And so I just think that that's an important part of the fabric of our church, and I love it. I love being a part of it. So thank you guys for asking me.
Well, let's start where we always start. You and I may not have my history all right, but you've got deep roots in history here in Nacogdoches.
Yes. Right?
I mean, so how did you grow up? How did you and your family wind up here in Nac? What's your story?
Well, my parents and Andrew's parents, actually, my husband, Andrew, they're from here. They're Ben. I'm not. I was born in College Station. No, yes, I was. I had to think about it. I was born in College Station. My dad was in vet school, and so he and my mom were there, and he said that I was his lucky charm because after I was born, after his third try to get into vet school, he finally got in. So,
oh wow.
Anyway, and so he finished up at A&M and went to Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio for a little while. I loved base living. I thought that was fantastic.
So did being a vet bring him there?
Yes, he went to school on the GI Bill. And so he went to go serve at Fort Sam Houston for 3 years. We were there. And then we moved to New Braunfels. He did veterinary work for a private ranch there for a little while. We lived right on the river. That was a pretty good gig, too. Yeah. And our driveway was an airstrip. So, man, when that school bus dropped us off, it was a hike to the house. But that was pretty fun. And but my dad and mom always, they yearned to be back in the piney woods. They just, that was always the goal. And so I was in about second grade, I think, first or second grade when we moved back here. And Dad started his practice very humbly. Our house was right in front of it was an old German restaurant that he converted, oddly enough, into his clinic. And
Interesting.
I know, yeah. And
where was the original clinic?
it's where the Duttons live.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So
That was the original spot.
that was it.
I remember
So-
going
Up
there
towards
quite a bit.
Central Heights.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
kind of Blake's stomping ground.
It
It's
is.
getting close.
Yeah.
Would you have considered that the bog?
No,
no.
no, that's just Central
I'm
Heights.
sorry. Okay.
We'll talk
Yeah.
about the
forgive
bog
me.
in a minute.
Forgive me. Sorry.
No,
Okay.
no.
Carry
so
on.
anyway, but loved my childhood. I was a gregarious kid. I loved being. I hated housework, and so man, to have an excuse to be working alongside my dad was just a huge part of my childhood. Just being able to. Be a part of all those farmers and hardworking people. Just seeing how
Yeah.
hard they worked for a living, and to just I don't know what they did in their community, and just the integrity that they walked in. And so I loved being a part of my dad's clinic, and so. I don't know. That's something that a lot of people don't know, but my boys can't gross me out. There's absolutely
You've seen it all.
There's no smell. There's no thing. I'm a perfect boy mom in that regard, I guess.
Yeah. So that's interesting not a lot of professions, particularly now, allow for the child to be in proximity to their parent while they're working and be part of it. Of course, we don't have to go that far back in history where that was the reality for most everybody, but it's not common today.
Right.
What was that like, being able to share work and be present in your dad's world? And then as a byproduct of that, being a vet is super present in a community.
Right.
So you're part of the fabric of the community in a really unique way. What was that like?
Well, my grandfather was also a part of my dad's practice. He was a huge just presence in the community. And I think because he kind of put a stamp of approval on that and helped my dad, it encouraged a lot of the farmers and people to trust my dad, a young vet. And anyway, but a lot of people called him Doc Hollis. They just assumed because he was there that he was a veterinarian also. And it wasn't until he passed away that people asked my dad, why didn't you mention his schooling and that he was a veterinarian? And Dad said, well, he wasn't, but
Wow.
But he was a World War II veteran, and to have 3 generations present in that practice, constantly with my dad's kids and then his dad, I just realized it was just one of the best. Just character forming. I mean, my grandfather constantly pushed my sister and I and my brother to take initiative, to be honest, that our name and who we were in the community, it was always going to get back to my dad or to him or to a relative. There was a lot of accountability and just learning how to treat people, how to love well through the actions, through the work that you do. So I don't think I appreciated at the time until I started raising children, and I wish that they could have so much of what I had. It was, I miss it, to be honest. I miss the fact that it was an open door policy into that work world and that realm and the community. But yeah,
it's probably one of those things too. You don't realize how it's normal to you,
right?
But a lot of people don't. Certainly have that experience, and reflecting back, I'm sure it's like, wow, what an amazing gift that I had that probably didn't even know.
Right.
I just thought it was normal.
Yeah, like my kids don't know how to walk up to a horse. Oh no, you don't touch that part of the horse. No, or cattle, they're freaked out. Blake, he's like, are they going to get me? No, they're cows. They, a bull maybe, but So it's just all those nuances that I love. And one of the things that I realized I learned the most was when you learn to read animals and owners and all that, you learn how to read people. And I don't think that I realized just how that went hand in hand until I started, looking for jobs and working in the community and all of that. And I really began to be able to read people well. And I think that came from constantly being in my dad's clinic and around animals and all of that. You learn to pick up on things.
Yeah. Wow. That's neat. That's really cool. So you do that, I guess you're all the way through your schooling
Yes.
years, you're in and out of the clinic. And
Right.
I mean, did you ever think, I want to be a vet?
Oh, I don't know. My dad was on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for the majority of our childhood. So cows calving in the middle of the night, and he was out regardless of the weather. And my dad is a big man, a strong guy, and to see just the physical demand that it had on him to do that. I was happy to pet the puppies and walk the dogs, all the cute stuff. But I didn't want any part of the large animal stuff. It was great, and I loved the farmers and their families. But I did actually work as a veterinary technician for a little while and loved it. That part I could enjoy, but I never wanted to run a practice. No.
Yeah.
Well, I think at that time, I mean, he didn't have a partner or anything in that.
Right.
For a long time, it was just him.
For a very long time. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to divert a little bit here. For a period of time, we actually went to the same church for a little while out at Pleasant Hill.
Yes.
And this is a little known fact. Well, many people may not know. You're pretty musical.
Right. Well,
Yeah. You won't talk about it, but you are musical, and it's evident in your kids because they're musical as well.
And now it's out in the internet.
It's out in the internet.
Universe.
So, but the very first time that I sang in church was with Holly.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the story? You can't just say that. What's the story? What'd you sing?
I mean, I don't remember if I'm exactly
Probably
what it was.
a hymn.
I think it was either that or maybe a Christmas song. I can't
Maybe.
remember. I remember.
Was it special music?
It was a special music for
I
sure.
see.
Yeah.
Look at you using the term.
I got you.
Yeah. So we've got a musical history that goes way back.
Well, this is maybe you know this, but my mom and her brother they made a gospel album.
Really?
Record. Oh yes.
I didn't know that.
Jesus is alive and well.
Okay.
Yes.
That's pretty awesome.
So it goes way back.
I hope we can get our hands on that somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Well, then I remember your brother.
Yes.
And he was very much in the military even at that time.
Oh yeah.
And I was a couple of years younger, and I was hardcore history military. So like I idolized him. I thought he was the coolest guy. Mm-hmm. And I remember like going on like church camping trips and playing like Capture the Flag in the dark. And he would show up in like a full camo ghillie suit, like, the whole 9 yards. And I just remember that
was your guy.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you sang with Blake in church at some point, then faith and church is part of your family at some point. Did you grow up that way? Was that something that happened as you were a kid? Like what propelled your family into church and faith, and what was that like as a kid?
Yeah. Well, my dad grew up going to Lily Grove in Central Heights, and my mom went to, it was College Heights at the time. It's now University Baptist, I think, on North Street. Yeah. And so both grew up just with very active Christian families. They were, just really rock solid in their faith. There was never a doubt. Wherever we were, whenever we moved multiple times, we always had a church home, had strong Christian friends, families that poured into us and, were just a part of that journey with us. And so when we moved back to Nacogdoches, as most couples do, it was like, well, there was a his church and a her church. And so they realized that that could really step on toes or have some hurt feelings there. So they decided to find their church together. Okay. And my mom always said that the moment she stepped into Fredonia Hill, it was just home. It just was welcoming, and she just really felt like that was home. And my dad, even though they had both been at very small churches, and this was a little out of their comfort zone, they really just felt at home here. And so we came, I'm trying to think if we were right before Brother Charlie Neighbors passed away. And I just remember the devastation of that, and just thinking as a little girl what that would be like to lose both parents. And so that was always in the back of my mind. And so in the following years that came, it was when Brother Steve James was here. I just remember just thinking about eternity, that had always been kind of embedded in my mind and heart after thinking of those children losing their parents, but also hearing the church body say so many things about, knowing where they were, knowing they would see them again. And that just remained in the back of my heart and mind. And my sister, who always goes first in absolutely everything, she walked into that journey in seeking Christ, and then immediately began teaching her little sister what that looked like, and modeled well what it looked like to have a change of heart, a change of behavior, and just a change in trajectory. She was a redhead and very stubborn, but when she chose to relinquish her life to Christ just fully and completely, she wanted her little sister to follow along in that. And so I was not far after that, and I think I was around 7 or 8, I think, when I made that commitment here in this church and was baptized.
Wow. Well, what's that? I mean, just take us back to, I don't know how old you would have been at that point, but when a church goes through a tragedy like that, Brother Charlie and his wife both, right?
Yeah.
Were killed in a car accident. And he had not been pastor here for a very long time when that happened, but was really deeply loved here, part of the community. And man, what's that like as a what are your memories of the church trying to walk through that tough moment together?
Right. Well, it just seemed like it was, I remember, I was a really little girl, but I remember my mom and dad, one of the things that, they had heard was what Mark Clark had alluded to, was just the church split and the hurt that had come before. And so they were kind of walking into a time after that when the church was still trying to find healing. And so Brother Charlie had stepped into that time period, and from what I know, again, I was a very little girl, but he was really doing his best to mend hearts and address things through God's word. And the church just loved his leadership. And when he and Kathy passed away in the accident, I just remember just the devastation people felt, but at the same time, how mobilized everyone was. And I just think that certainly it was not God's desire to rip that, through a church and hurt. It wasn't his cause, but he certainly used it. I just think that it was definitely a time that was used for people to just look at, how fleeting life is, and that there are no guarantees, and God is still good. He is merciful. Wow. And so it was, I just remember that feeling of just, watching the people come together and serve. They went and latched onto, helping that family. I think an aunt and uncle ended up taking the kids, and they just helped them transition and helped with the move and cleaning out the house and helping that family in any way that they could, but it was still just a devastating loss.
Yeah. Yeah. But coming off of the amount of conflict that the church had been through, what you're describing is kind of like it was a real present reminder of,
or at least it was for me as a little girl.
Yeah, how fleeting things are and what's really important, and that's a dramatic moment in the life of the church. Okay, so you, I guess, then after becoming a Christian, in the footsteps of your older sister, you, continue in Nacogdoches, right? I mean, you stay here and are involved in the church, and your faith grows and flourishes. What was adolescent years like, and that process we often talk about here with people of owning your faith and it not being just tradition from your family, but really starting to own things for yourself. How did that process play itself out for you?
Well, gosh, when you grow up in a church, it's one of the most wonderful things because you always have this safety net of people that love you, and they're going to love you no matter what. But at the same time, it can cause some laziness in your faith. Sure. It can cause you to get, or at least it caused me to, maybe not search. And that's where sometimes I look at people who come to Christ later and they're just hungry and they just pore over God's word, ravenous for its truths and to understand the history and how applicable it is to them. And I didn't really delve into that or understand that or have that hunger. I always knew that I wanted to obey God's word, but I didn't know God's word, not the way I should have. And that was no fault of any of the staff or anything. That was just me kind of coasting. But one of the things that Blake alluded to, we did end up at the same church. My parents, we built a house out further in Central Heights, and for a little while, some of my parents found out about a pastor that they grew up knowing, Brother Jimmy Hardy, and he had retired from a church in West Texas that he had pastored for several years, and just a very godly man, and they just wanted to sit under his teaching for a while, and I'm so thankful that they did. I don't encourage, people to hover, but always a good thing to listen to other godly pastors, I think, in teaching. And anyway, I can't, that man, the way he preached and the way he touched my heart, he told me one time, he said, Holly, when I look out, he said, I can just tell you're just soaking it up. And I was. He lit a fire in me. God lit a fire in me through him and through his willingness to, in his final years, what should have been years of retirement and fishing and 42 playing with my grandparents. But he didn't. He continued to work hard and pour into a church that was broken and had a lot wrong. And he wanted to bring health, and he wanted to grow those people. And I just adored him so much that when I had Drew, my firstborn, Drew didn't even know this till the other day. I actually, Brother Hardy ended up getting very sick and passing away with cancer, I think. I believe so, yeah. And he was on his deathbed, and I went by, and I knocked on the door to just check on him. And his wife, Joanne, answered the door, and I said, Joanne, can I just have Brother Hardy pray over Drew? Can he just put his hands on him and just bless him? Can he just? I just knew. So I don't get emotional about much, but that man being able to put his hands on my child and just pray a blessing over him, because I knew as a mom, I would never be enough. I could never protect him from everything. I could never bring about Christ in his life. And I knew Brother Hardy simply laying his hands on him couldn't either. But I knew of the power of prayer. And I knew that man, the way he prayed and the way he walked with Jesus, I wanted that for Drew. I wanted that for all of my children. But at that time, I just had the one. And so that's still probably one of my just most treasured memories. And sometimes raising that same child, when I have just had conversations of, Lord, this kid, what am I going to do? And I would go back to that sweet and precious moment when Brother Hardy put his hands on him on his deathbed, and he prayed over Drew, and he blessed him. And so I'm very thankful for that.
Do you think that that's something that, that's your first kid?
Yeah. And
a pretty dramatic experience, pretty powerful moment. Mm-hmm. Do you think that moment and kind of the momentum out of that moment, did that change the way you parented? Do you see kind of that moment playing out in the way you raised your kids? How did that have ripple effect and impact as you raised 3 boys?
Yeah, it was definitely just a wonderful reminder that they're not mine. Just truly, it linked my heart to, I think, Hannah, is that correct? Wasn't she the one that was praying in the temple, and she was, they thought she was drunk, but she wasn't. She was just simply praying, but she ended up giving her son Samuel to the priesthood and to serve God. And it was just a really good reminder for me that whether I had sons or daughters or some of all, and however many children God gave me, that they're not mine. And I wanted them to be put back in his arms. Any parent can live long enough in this world and read headlines and all of that to know that I can do all I can to shield my children and protect them, but they are safest in his arms. And so I would say undoubtedly that absolutely shaped just, me not trying to hang on to them or shape them or form them, but just continually giving them back to Him, and walking in faith in that. I'm going to watch them go through some hard things. I'm going to watch them struggle really hard, but I want them to hear His voice, and they won't be able to do that if all they can hear is mine.
Wow.
So.
Is that something that you knew beforehand? And you kind of went, okay, I got to remember that? Or is that something that you come to realize as you're raising them?
I think it happens for me, it happened as I was raising them, that, like as just kind of wave after wave of onslaught of, just people or circumstances or things in this life, they wanted to shape my child or wanted to tell me what, how I should be addressing things with my kids. Ultimately, I recognized that I can't do things the way this person does it, or I can't do this the way this book says, or the way this. It's going to be unique. It's going to be different based on each child and based on their relationship with God, and also where I am. You know, I mean, I have to stay rock solid. I have to stay poring over Scripture in order to love them well, in order to not put my selfish, expectations or ambitions or whatever on top of them. That's just a burden that is unnecessary, especially if I believe that they are safest in His hands.
Yeah. I just remember Margie. That was one of the things as we interviewed Margie that really stood out to me was for her, she talked about David receiving Christ. I think he was 10, 11, 12, something like that, kind of in those years. But her realization that she had to surrender him, very much like what you're talking about, surrender him in the process of his growing in Christ, that was the Holy Spirit's job. Right. And that part of now what she's doing as she's raising a believer is she is making sure that he knows that this is between you and God, that it's the Lord that is going to shape you and mold you. And I imagine it's the same kind of mentality but I've heard it said that, the idol of parenting is control. And, as raising small kids, that is on the money. Yeah. They're I think oftentimes out of, maybe it's out of fear or worry or concern for the future or whatever, we think that the best thing for them is control. But what you're talking about is something very different. You're talking about surrender. How do you get to that point where you release control, where you go, okay, the best thing is not the tightest grip, but releasing control, that this is the Lord's job? How do you do that as a parent? Yeah. If you have the answer to that question. That's $1 million question. But I just love to hear your perspective.
Yeah. Have you seen Drew Middlebrook? Have you met this child of mine?
I have.
Yeah. Part of it is just even recognizing who God has created this tiny human to be. And, Drew was, he was my first, and I've made Brett and Blake both thank him for some of the things that he's had to walk through first.
That's an interesting approach.
If you're a second, third, fourth, or whatever child, if you're listening to this, please thank that older sibling. They go through everything first. Yeah. And but Drew just, he went first, and I just recognized in him, he knew his mind from a very young age. And he was very a sweet, kiddo, but just, I don't know, just one of those things that I can't remember if it was Becky, maybe Weems, who we Drew and her daughter Lexi are the same age, and so we both came into motherhood in the same season. And I leaned heavily on Becky during that time, and you can't have a better friend than Becky Weems when you are entering motherhood. But she helped me recognize that there were things that I could parent and change, but there were things that were innate, that were God just formed in him. And I had Brett, and I'll never forget praying one time because Brett was my arguer. He loves to have a good argument, and not in a bad way. I mean, it's that can be productive, not disrespectful, but just wanting to know the whys and what are the boundaries. And in that conversation, I can remember just being mentally exhausted by it and just thinking, holy cow! And I can just remember praying for God to change this, this rapid questioning of everything. And I just, in my heart, I just remember hearing just God say, no, this is exactly how I want him. And it just hit me. I didn't come to that. I mean, I wanted to change that kid, let me tell you. I really did. But God just has been so sweet to show me the uniqueness of each of my children. And there are times when I know I've messed up, and I tell them, I know I've messed up, but, I pray that you'll love me and be patient and give grace just as I give grace. And so.
Well, and I think it brings a whole lot of clarity to one of the reasons that we ought to be praying for our children is if you're ever going to get any sort of idea about who God has created them to be, about what he sees when he sees them, the only place that's going to happen is in prayer. Yeah. And if you're saying, I'm kind of making an equation in my mind as you're talking, but if you're saying that so much of that, being able to turn over control to the Lord in parenting has to do with you hearing from the Lord who he's created them to be. And your job as a parent, what do you want to do? You want that to be who they become, not the version of them that you could create, but the one that God has designed. And the only way you're going to get that picture in your head and heart is in prayer. Right. And I think we hear that as parents all the time, like pray for your kids. Yeah. And it's one of those things I think can just be a nice, cute little Christian thing to say, but man, it's real and it's serious. And that's what you're talking about. You're talking about talking to God and your imagination being full of God's design for your kiddos, which allows you then to say, okay, then that's yours. And I want to embrace that and enjoy that about them rather than try to change it. Yes. Man.
Yeah. And it also grinds a few edges off of you as the parent during all that too. It reveals not just that child's character, but your own. You mentioned earlier the, one of the idols in parenting, and one of the hardest ones for me to get over was comparison. That was a really difficult one to get over. I think that happens a lot, and that's been, something to release to God over and over is looking at who he has created my child to be versus who am I comparing him to, or what am I comparing him to, and how is that hindering their growth and what he has for them? So
yeah. Well, you're doing the sacred task of you're approaching your final round in it of moving through teenage boy years. You're in round 2, approaching round 3.
Yes.
How old's Brett?
Brett's 17.
17. Okay.
Blake he'll be 11 this next month.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So
you should have it down by now, I feel like.
Yeah, because that's how that goes. You've got 3 girls.
Yeah, I know.
How does that work for you?
Yeah. So repetition here. You're doing this over and over again. What would you say to people like me that are on the cusp of doing this for the first time? Yeah. Our son is the same age as Blake, and they hang together. And now having done this a few times, what would you say? Like, man, if I've learned anything over these first 2 going through it, what encouragement, warning, what would you say?
I would just say record your prayers as much as possible. I do keep prayer journals. I've recorded next to certain scriptures that I'm either praying over my children, or I've also prayed over my nephews. I love my nieces and nephews, and I've got several prayers that I've been praying for them. And Hayden and Sierra getting married this year was a huge answer to his Aunt Holly's prayers over the years. But record those prayers, record all of that, because that's one of those, letting your children see the evidence of your faith when you are praying in the morning in those early hours or not so early hours. Who am I kidding? Just being
Thanks for
really
the
real.
honesty.
It's really,
Wilma Jones can do that early in the morning.
That's
Not
right.
everybody- not everybody else. Yeah.
So, but just, recording that, so that there have been really sweet times when I've been able to go back and look in some of those journals or look in my Bible and tell the boys, man, well, this is an answer to prayer. Look at this, and to see evidence of that. And so, I don't know, and just continually seek God. I know that sounds trite and it sounds like just the churchy answer, but I can't tell you how many great conversations that I've had with my boys. Take the time to listen, put phones aside. When they make a move to come to you and have a conversation, shut everything else around you down and just sit. And my mother-in-law has done that really well in my life. She has shown me the value of a great conversation and how that grows families and strengthens the bond there. And my mom as well, and is a good listener. But listen to your children and then just pray over them and show them the evidence of those prayers as God fulfills. Things will go wrong, things will crash and burn, but God is good, and it's a great reminder for your kids to see that.
Oh, that's so good. That is really good. I love the encouragement to not be distracted in those important moments, and I think that's one of the things that it feels like that fight is getting harder and harder and harder. Is this that the so many things that seem to seek our attention to distract us, but the need for kids to be able to process with their parents in spaces that are not full of clutter and distraction, to have authentic conversations and honest conversations. I can think back at times in my life where things were not maybe going well, or I was wrestling with something, and I had undivided attention from my parents who I knew loved me and were going to be in it with me, and just how important that was to be able to go there to a place there will be grace and love and a listener. Yeah. And you never know when your kid's going to need that, but being undistracted when they show up. That's so good. Yeah. That's so good. Okay. So you got one more about to come through. He's winding up for the teenage years. Right. What would you say, as a parent? Cause I think that's something that I reflect on a lot, is how much my view of God has changed. Maybe not changed isn't the right word, has grown deep because of being a parent, and just thinking about the way, even just ways that I used to think about the way that God sees me, and then going, wait a minute, but if God's a father and he calls himself father, he calls himself a parent, then this is probably how he sees me. And just having to realign my thinking. How do you think that parenting has specifically shaped your faith and your relationship with the Lord?
Well, first of all, it was recognizing the sacrifice that he made. Drew's birth date that he was actually due was Christmas Day. And I was fully prepared to, just allow that to happen, even though the doctor was like, really, Holly? And I said, yes, really.
Don't call me on that day.
But Drew, per his personality and God's timing, came 3 weeks early. So, but I'll never forget Christmas morning, Andrew and I sitting in bed and having that child between us and looking at him. And it just hit me, just the sacrifice of what God did. I mean, just the innocence of that newborn, it just absolutely rocked my world. I just had to just thank him for what he did. So, just an absolute gratitude for the sacrifice, and his love for me was, I had never known that until I had a child. And then the other thing I would say is just patience. That's one of those things that you look at the long game quite a bit as a parent. You can focus on the small things and the trials immediately in front of you, but ultimately our focus as believers and as parents is to look at the long game and to not just plant the seeds, but to water them and to create fertile ground for those to grow in. And that's where I thank my church body, because they're a part of that. They help cut the weeds. Blake pouring into Drew, the men in our church are, I can't tell you what a gift that is. And I hope that people take advantage of that you pray over that. That's something I prayed and asked God to bring one mentor for Drew, just one, because eventually you'll find that your voice is good, but your son will need to hear, or your children sometimes need to hear from other believers, other men or women, and it's just integral. God was so faithful not to bring just one, but to bring a multitude of men who have spoken into Drew's life, whom he still seeks counsel from, and that's been a huge blessing. I can't thank God enough for that, and I tell people that's part of kind of my mothering, testimony, is to tell other women and tell other moms, pray for this. And it's a hard thing for mamas to trust other people with their kids these days. But the men of Fredonia Hill have been very faithful, and I'm a very protective mom, but I can't speak enough of the people who have helped shape and form and grow my children. And I'm just extremely thankful.
Man, I think that's such a good word, is just a word on patience and playing the long game. And that's how God sees us. And I think I get where I get the most frustrated in my walk with the Lord oftentimes is because I'm in a hurry.
Yeah.
And I beat myself up with guilt and shame. I haven't quote unquote arrived there yet. And I get frustrated with my shortcomings, and then that frustration piles up and produces more and more. And I end up stuck because I'm just frustrated. And if you stop for just a second though, and then think, is that how God sees this right now?
Right.
Is he frustrated? Is he going, man, he just cannot get this together. Let's go. Let's get, I'm in a hurry here. Let's go. That's just totally not the nature of God. And I had a professor in seminary one time that said, God took time out of the equation as it related to our holiness, our sanctification. Why are you just slow down?
Yeah.
He's not in a hurry. He's not worried. Let him grow you in his timing. And it was just like, it takes all the tension out of it. And man, I just think, so I don't know, maybe that's where we'll shut it down today, is just to kind of just say to you, man, if you're listening and you've heard Holly talk about the long game of parenting, the patience, the care, the love that is in it, man, in the gospel it says, like, how much more does your heavenly Father, if that's the way that we think of our children, how much more is God thinking that of you? He's not in a hurry. He's not in a hurry. He loves you and knows exactly what you need in the process that you need it, in the timing that you need it. Be encouraged wherever you're at, whatever you're in, that the Lord's not in a hurry. He loves you, and he's got a plan and is working that out. Your job is just to show up. Just show up and and lay your life down and let him do things as he wants to do it. So, man, Holly, thank you. I didn't know that we would get into like parenting 101 here, but there is some gold. Thank you so much. I'm telling you, as two parents, figuring this out, Blake and I are both right there with you, trying to, and you've got a little more experience on us, so we're like soaking this up like a sponge. So,
well, she's got some good boys. I can say that.
Some good dudes.
Yeah. There's not many 20-year-old young men that would call and ask me my opinion on things, and so
There's also not many 20-year-old, 11-year-olds.
That's true.
She's got one of those. And
Yeah,
you got to.
Well, I was out at the soccer field the other day, and I just kept, Mr. Russell, and I'm like, who is it? And then there was Blake, and then we ended up talking about fishing.
Yeah, Blake's her 11-year-old.
Right.
Yeah.
How many like teenagers won't speak to you in public? Blake will go find you.
They'll find you
to speak. Man,
Yep.
some good dudes. Some good. I'll never forget my first conversation. My first lengthy conversation with Blake was when he was being baptized.
Right.
And I got up in the baptistry, and we were a little early. We had probably 15, 20 minutes before it was time. And he was all dressed and ready. I mean, he's got it figured out. And he sat there and told me about fish in Alaska. We had the most grown-up conversation I probably had that entire day.
Yeah.
And at that time, he was probably 9. Was he 9?
Yeah.
Or 10? I mean, it's just like, who's this little adult? Anyway, he's amazing. So anyway, good kids. Thank you for sharing that part of your life with us. And thanks for being the number one friend of the pod.
Right.
Absolutely.
So really
I want one
appreciate
of those stickers.
You're getting the first sticker.
There
First
we go.
friend of all, you get the first sticker. All right. Well, we're going to close it down there. We've got more guests to come as we march towards 50
Big 5-0
episodes. Just a few more left, and that'll be the close when we hit 50. That'll be the close
of our season.
Season
2.
Yeah, season 2 will come to a close then, and we've got a little bit of a break.
We'll take a break.
And then we'll launch into season 3. So, man, thank you guys so much for listening. We have really enjoyed doing this a ton as we come towards the end of that second season. Thanks for listening. And as always, if you've got suggestions or thoughts, and we want to hear feedback. We really do want to hear you talk about how these stories have impacted
Yeah, it's
you.
really cool to hear how stories have impacted your life and what you took away from that, because I think everybody takes something away differently from each one. It's really neat to see how that happens.
Yeah, so let us know those things. You can do that on any of the social media channels. You can hit us up on our email at
stc@fredoniahill.org.
There it is. All right, well, we'll see you guys next time. Adios.